Chapter 109. Sleep. Then they came out of the narrow valley, and at once she saw the reason. There stood Peter and Edmund and all the rest of Aslan's army fighting desperately against the crowd of horrible creatures whom she had seen last night. Only now, in the daylight, they looked even stranger and more evil and more deformed. I stopped there. I had been reading for over an hour and sleep still didn't come. It was almost 2 a.m. Everyone else was asleep. I had my flashlight on under the sleeping bag, and maybe the light was why I couldn't sleep, but I was too afraid to turn it off. I was afraid of how dark it was outside the sleeping bag. When we got back to our section in front of the movie screen, no one had even noticed we had been gone. Mr. Tushman and Miss Rubin and Summer and all the rest of the kids were just watching the movie. They had no clue how something bad had almost happened to me and Jack. It's so weird how that can be. How you could have a night that's the worst in your life, but to everybody else it's just an ordinary night. Like on my calendar at home, I would mark this as being one of the most horrific days of my life. This and the day Daisy died. But for the rest of the world, this was just an ordinary day. Or maybe it was even a good day. Maybe somebody won the lottery today. Amos, Miles, and Henry brought me and Jack over to where we had been sitting before, with Summer and Maya and Reed, and then they went and sat where they had been sitting before, with Ximena and Savannah and their group. In a way, everything was exactly as we had left it before we went to looking for the toilets. The sky was the same, the movie was the same, everyone's faces were the same, mine was the same. But something was different, something had changed. I could see Amos and Miles and Henry telling their group what had just happened. I knew they were talking about it because they kept looking over at me while they were talking. Even though the movie was still playing, people were whispering about it in the dark. News like that spreads fast. It was what everyone was talking about on the bus right back to the cabins. All the girls, even girls I didn't know very well, were asking me if I was okay. The boys were all talking about getting revenge on the group of the seventh grade jerks trying to figure out what school they were came from. I wasn't planning on telling the teachers about any of what had happened, but they found out anyway. Maybe it was the torn sweatshirt and the bloody elbow, or maybe it's just that teachers hear everything. When we got back from the camp, Mr. Tushman took me to the first aid office, and while I was getting my elbow cleaned and bandaged up in the camp nurses, Mr. Tushman and the camp director were in the next room talking with Amos and Jack and Henry and Miles, trying to get a description of the troublemakers. When he asked me about them a little later, I said I couldn't remember their faces at all, which wasn't true. It's their face I kept seeing every time I closed my eyes to sleep. The look of total horror on the girl's face when she first saw me. The way the kid with the flashlight, Edo, looked at me as he talked to me like he hated me, like a lamb to the slaughter. I remember Dad saying that ages ago, but tonight I think I finally got what it meant.
Chapter 110 Aftermath. Mom was waiting for me in front of the school along with all the other parents when the bus arrived. Mr. Tashman told me on the bus ride home that they had called my parents to tell them there had been a situation in the night before, but that everyone was fine. He said the camp director and several of the counselors went looking for the hearing aid in the morning while we all went swimming in the lake, but they couldn't find it anywhere. But good, reimburse us the cost of the hearing aids, he said. They felt bad about what happened. I wonder if Eddie had taken my hearing aids with him as a camp souvenir, something to remember the ark. Mom gave me a tight hug when I got up the bus, but she didn't slam me with questions like I thought she might. Her hug felt good, and I didn't shake it off like some of the other kids were doing with their parents' hugs. The bus driver started unloading our duffel bags, and I went to find mine while Mom talked to Mr. Tushman and Miss Rubin, who had walked over to her. As I rolled my back toward her, a lot of kids who don't usually say anything to me were nodding hello, or patting my back as I walked by them. "Ready?" Mom said when she saw me. She took my duffel bag, and I didn't even try to hold on to it. I was fine with her carrying it. If she had wanted to carry me on her shoulders, I could have been fine with that too, to be truthful. As we started to walk away, Mr. Tuchman gave me a quick, tight hug, but didn't say anything. Chapter 110, Aftermath. Mom was waiting for me in front of the school, along with all.
Chapter 111, Home. Mom and I didn't talk much in the whole walk home, and when I got to the front stoop, I automatically looked in the front bay window, because I forgot for a second that Daisy wasn't going to be there like always, perched on the sofa with her front paws on the windowsill, waiting for us to come home. It made me kind of sad when we got inside. As soon as we did, Mom dropped my duffel bag and wrapped her arms around me and kissed me on my head and on my face like she were breathing me in. "It's okay, Mom, I'm fine," I said, smiling. She nodded and took my face in her hands. Her eyes were shiny. "I know you are," she said. "I missed you so much, Augie. I missed you too." I could tell she wanted to say a lot of things, but she was stopping herself. "Are you hungry?" she asked. "Starving. Can I have a grilled cheese?" "Of course," he answered, and immediately started to make the sandwich while I took my jacket off and sat down at the kitchen counter. "Where's Via?" I asked. "She coming home with Dad today." "Boy, did she miss you, Augie," Mom said. "Yeah, she would have liked the Natural Reserve. You know what movie they played? The Sound of Music. You have to tell her that. So, do you want to hear about the bad part or the good part first?" I asked after a few minutes, leaning my head on my hand. "Whatever you want to talk about," she answered. "Well, except for last night, I had an awesome time," I said. "I mean, it was just awesome. That's why I'm so bummed. I felt like it ruined the whole trip for me." "No, sweetie, don't let them do that to you. You were there for more than 48 hours, and that awful part lasted 1 hour. Don't let them take away from you, okay?" "I know," I nodded. "Did Mr. Tushman tell you about the hearing aids?" "Yes, he called us this morning." "Was that mad because they're so expensive?" "Oh my gosh. Of course not, Augie. He just wanted to know that you were all right. That all mattered to us, and that you don't let those talks ruin your trip." I kind of laughed the way she said the word talks. "What?" she asked. "Talks," I cheered her. "That's kind of an old-fashioned word. Okay, just morons, imbecile," she said, flipping over the sandwich in the pan. "Cretino, as my mother would have said. Whatever you want to call them. If I saw them on the street, I could." She shook her head. "They were pretty big, Mom," I smiled. "7th graders, I think." She shook her head. "7th graders? Mr. Tursman didn't tell us that." "Oh my goodness. Did he tell you how Jack stood up for me?" I said, and I almost went like bam. He rammed into the leader. They both crashed to the ground like in a real fight. It was pretty awesome. Almost lip was bleeding and everything. "He told us they were fine, but," she said, looking at me with her eyebrows raised, I'm just so grateful you and Amos and Jack are fine. When I think about what could have happened." She trailed off, flipping the grilled cheese again. "My Montauk hoodie got totally shredded." "Well, that can be replayed," she answered. She lifted the grilled cheese onto a plate and put the plate in front of me on the counter. "Milk or white grape juice?" "Chocolate milk, please." I started devouring the sandwich. "Oh, can you do it that special way you made it with the froth? How did you and Jack end up at the edge of wood in the first place?" she said, pouring the milk into a tall glass. "Jack had to go to the back room," I answered, my mouth full. As I was talking, she spooned in the chocolate powder and started rolling a small between her palms really fast. But there was a huge line and he didn't want to wait. So we went toward the woods to pee. She looked up at me while she was whisking. I know she was thinking we shouldn't have done that. The chocolate milk in the glass now had 2-inch froth on top. That looked good, Mom, thanks. And then what happened? She said, putting the glass in front of me. I took a long drink of the chocolate milk. Is it okay if we don't talk about it anymore right now? Oh, okay. I promise I'll tell you all about it later. When Dad and Vida come home, I will tell you every detail. I just don't want to have to tell the whole story over and over, you know? Absolutely. I finished my sandwich in 2 more bits and gulped down the chocolate milk. Wow, you practically inhaled that sandwich. Do you want another one? She said. I shook my head and whipped my mouth with the back of my hand. Mom, am I always going to have to worry about jokes like that? I asked. Like when I grow up, is always going to be like this? She didn't answer right away, but took my plate and glass and put them in the sink and rinsed them with water. There are always going to be jokes in the world, Augie, she said, looking at me, but I really believe, and Daddy really believe, that there are more good people on this earth than bad people, and the good people watch out for each other and take care of each other, just like Jack was there for you, and Amos, and the other kids. Oh yeah, Mike and Henry, I answered. They were awesome too. It were because Mike and Henry haven't really been nice to me all during the year. Sometimes people surprise us, she said, rubbing the top of my head. I guess. Want another glass of chocolate milk? No, I'm good, I said. Thanks, Mom. Actually, I'm kind of tired. I didn't sleep too good last night. You should take a nap. Thanks for leaving me, Babel, by the way. You got my note? She smiled. I slept with him both nights. She was about to say something else when her cell phone rang and she answered. She stopped beaming as she listened. Oh my God, this. Really? What kind? She said excitedly. Yup, he's right here. He was about to take a nap. Want to say hi? Oh, okay, see you in 2 minutes. She clicked it up. That was Daddy, she said excitedly. He and Via are just down the block. He's not a word, I said. He left early because he couldn't want to wait to see you. She said, so don't take a nap quite yet. 5 seconds later, Dad and Via came through the door. I ran into Dad's arms, and he picked me up and spun me around and kissed me. He didn't let me go for a full minute until I said, Dad, it's okay. And then it was Via's turn, and she kissed me all over like she used to do when I was little. It wasn't until she stopped that I noticed the big white cardboard box they had brought with them. What is that? I said. Open it, said Dad, smiling. And he and Mom looked at each other like they knew a secret. Come on, Augie, said Via. I opened the box. Inside was the cutest little puppy I have ever seen. It was black and furry, with a pointy little nose and bright black eyes and small ears that flopped down.
Chapter 112 Bear. We called the puppy Bear because when Mom first saw him, she said she looked just like a little bear cub. I said, that's what we should call him, and everyone agreed that was a perfect name. I took the next day off from school, not because my elbow was hurting me, which it was, but so I could play with Bear all day long. Mom let Via stay home from school too, so the two of us took turns cuddling with Bear and playing tug of war with him. We had kept all Daisy's old toys, and we brought them out now to see which ones he liked best. It was fun hanging out with Via all day, just the two of us. It was like old times, like before I started going to school. Back then, I couldn't wait for her to come home from school so she could play with me before starting her homework. Now that we were older, though, and I'm going to school and have friends of my own that I can hang out with, we never do that anymore. So it was nice hanging out with her, laughing and playing. I think she liked it too.
Chapter 113 The Shift. When I went back to school the next day, the first thing I noticed was that there was a big shift in the way things were. A monumental shift, a seismic shift, maybe even a cosmic shift. Whatever you want to call it, it was a big shift. Everyone, not just in our grade but every grade, had heard about what had happened to us with the 7th graders, so suddenly I wasn't known for what I had always been known for, but for this other thing that had happened. And the story of what happened had gotten bigger and bigger each time it was told. 2 days later, the way the story went that almost had gotten into a major first fight with the kid, and Miles and Henry and Jack had thrown some punches at the other guys too. And the escape across the field became this whole long adventure through the confused maze and into the deep dark woods. Jack's version of story was probably the best because he's so funny, but in whatever version of story, and no matter who was telling it, two things always stay the same. I got picked on because of my face, and Jack defended me, and those guys' armors, Henry and Miles, protected me. And now that they had protected me, I was different to them. It was like I was one of them. They all call me little dude now, even the jocks. These big dudes I barely even knew before would knuckle punch me in the hallways now. Another thing to come out of it was Armors became super popular than Julian, because he missed the whole thing, was really out of the loop. Miles and Henry was hanging out with Armors all the time now, like they switched their best friends. I would like to be able to say that Julian started treating me better, too, but that wouldn't be true. He still gave me a dirty look across the room. He still never talked to me or Jack, but he was the only one who was like that now, and me and Jack, we couldn't care less.
Chapter 114 Ducks. The day before the last day of school, Mr. Tusman called me into his office to tell me they had found out the names of the 7th graders from the nature retreat. He read off a bunch of names that didn't mean anything to me, and then he said the last name, Edward Johnson. I nodded. You recognize the name? He said. They call him Eddie. Right, well, they found this in Edward's locker. He handed me what was left of my hearing aid headband. The right piece was completely gone and the left one was mangled. The band that connected the two, the lobot part, was bent down the middle. His school wants to know if you want to press charges, said Mr. Tusman. I looked at my hearing aid. No, I don't think so. I shrugged. I'm being fitted for new ones anyway. Why don't you talk about it with your parents tonight? I will call your mom tomorrow to talk about it with her too. Would they go to jail? I asked. No, not jail, but they probably go to juvie court. And maybe they could learn a lesson that way. Just me. That etiquette is not learning any lessons. I joked. He sat down behind his desk. Augie, why don't you sit down a second? He said. I sat down. All things on his desk were the same as when I first walked into his office last summer. The same mirrored cup, the same little globe floating in the air. That felt like ages ago. Had to believe this year almost over, huh? He said, almost like he was reading my mind. Yeah. Has it been a good year for you, Augie? Has it been okay? Yeah, it's been okay. I nodded. I know academically it's been a great year for you. You are one of our top students. Congrats on the high honor roll. Thanks. Yeah, that's cool. But I know it's had its share of ups and downs, he said, raising his eyebrows. Certainly, that night at the nature reserve was one of the low points. Yeah, I nodded. But it was also kind of good, too. In what way? Well, you know, how people stood up for me and stuff. That was pretty wonderful, he said, smiling. Yeah, I know in school things got a little hairy with Julian at times. I have to admit, he surprised me with that one. You know about that stuff? I asked him. Middle school directors have a way of knowing a lot about a lot of stuff. Do you have like secret security cameras in the hallways? I joked. And microphones everywhere? He laughed. No, seriously. He laughed again. No, not seriously. Oh, but teachers know more than kids think. Augie, I wish you and Jack had come to me about the mean notes that were left in your lockers. How do you know about that? I said. I'm telling you, middle school directors know all. It wasn't that big a deal. I answered. And we wrote notes too. He smiled. I don't know if it's public yet, he said, though it will be soon anyway. But Julian Urbans is not coming back to Bachelor Prep next year. What? I said. I honestly couldn't hide how surprised I was. His parents don't think Bachelor Prep is a good fit for him. Mr. Tussman continued, raising his shoulders. Whoa, that's big news, I said. Yeah, I thought you should know. When suddenly I noticed that the pumpkin portrait that used to be behind his desk were gone, and my drawing my self-portrait as an animal that I drew for the New Year art show was now framed and hanging behind the desk. Hey, that's mine. I pointed. Mr. Tussman turned around like he didn't know what I was talking about. Oh, that's right, he said, tapping his forehead. I've been meaning to show this to you for months now. My self-portrait as a duck, I nodded. I love this piece, Augie, he said. When your art teacher showed it to me, I asked her if I could keep it for my work. I hope that's okay with you. Oh yeah, sure. What happened to the pumpkin portrait? Right behind you. Oh yeah, nice. I have been meaning to ask you since I hung this up, he said, looking at it. Why did you choose to represent yourself as a duck? What do you mean? I answered. That was the assignment. Yes, but why a duck? He said. Is it safe to assume that it was because of the story of the duckling that turns into a swan? No, I laughed, shaking my head. It's because I think I look like a duck. Oh, said Mr. Tussman, his eyes opening wide. He started laughing. Really? Huh? Yeah, I guess. Here I was looking for symbolism and metaphors. And sometimes a duck is just a duck. Yeah, I guess, I said, not quite getting why he thought that was so funny. He laughed to himself for a good 30 seconds. Anyway, Augie, thanks for chatting with me, he said. Finally, I just want you to know it's truly a pleasure having you here at Bachelor Prep, and I'm really looking forward to next year. He reached across the desk and we shook hands. See you tomorrow at graduation. See you tomorrow, Mr. Tussman.
Chapter 115. The Last Precept. These were written on Mr. Brown's chalkboard when we walked into English class for the last time. Mr. Brown's June precept: just follow the day and reach for the sun. The polyphonic spree. Have a great summer vacation. Class 5B. It's been a great year and you've been a wonderful group of students. If you remember, please send me a postcard this summer with your personal precept. It can be something you made up for yourself or something you've read somewhere that means something to you. If so, don't forget the attribution, please. I really look forward to getting them. Tom Brown, 563 Sebastian Place, Bronx, New York, 10053.
Chapter 90. The Fifth Grade Nature Retreat. Every year in spring, the fifth graders of Bachelor Prep go away for 3 days and 2 nights to a place called the Broadwood Nature Reserve in Pennsylvania. It's a 4-hour bus ride away. The kids live in cabins with bunk beds. There are campfires, s'mores, and long walks to the woods. The teachers have been prepping us about this all year long, so all the kids in the grade are excited about it, except for me. And it's not even that I'm not excited, because I kind of am. It's just I have never ever slept away from home before, and I'm kind of nervous. Most kids have had sleepovers by the time they're my age. A lot of kids have gone sleepaway camps or stay with their grandparents or whatever. Not me, not unless you include hospital stays, but even then, Mom or Dad always stayed with me overnight. But I never slept over Tata or Papa's house, or Aunt Kate or Uncle Paul's house. When I was very little, that was my many because there was too many medical. Chapter 98, The 5th Grade Nature Retreat. Every year in spring, the 5th graders of Beecher Prep go away for 3 days and 2 nights to a place called Broadwood Nature Reserve in Pennsylvania. It's a 4-hour bus ride away. The kids live in cabins with bunk beds. There are campfires and small and long walks to the woods. The teachers have been prepping us for this all year long, so all the kids in the grade are excited about it, except for me. And it's not even that I'm not excited, because I kind of am. It's just I never slept away from home before, and I'm kind of nervous. Most kids have had sleepovers by the time they are my age. Other kids have gone to sleepaway camps or stay with their grandparents or whatever. Not me, not unless you include hospital stays. But even then, Mom or Dad always stayed with me overnight. But I never slept over Tata or Papa's house, or Aunt Kate or Uncle Paul's house. When I was very little, that was mainly because there were too many medical issues, like my tattoo need to be cleared every hour, or reinserting my fitting tube if I got detached. But when I got bigger, I just never felt like sleeping anywhere else. There was one time when I half slept over Christopher's house. We were about 8 and we were still best friends. Our family had gone for a visit to his house, and me and Christopher were having such a great time playing Lego Star Wars that I didn't have a want to leave. When it was time to go, we were like, please, can we have a sleepover? So our parents said yes, and Mom and Dad and Bea drove home, and me and Christopher stayed up until midnight playing, until Lisa, his mom, said, okay guys, time to go to bed. Well, that's when I kind of panicked a bit. Lisa tried to help me to go to sleep, but I just started crying that I wanted to go home. So at 1 a.m., Lisa called my Mom and Dad drove all the way back out to Bridgeport to pick me up. We didn't get home until 3 a.m., so my one and only sleepover up until now was pretty much of a disaster, which is why I'm a little nervous about the nature retreat. On the other hand, I'm really excited.
Chapter 107. Take your seats, everyone. Jack and I walked right behind a couple of 6th graders into the building, and then followed them to the auditorium. Mrs. G was at the entrance, handing out the programs and telling kids where to go. 5th graders down the aisles up to the left, she said. 6th graders go to the right. Everyone come in, good morning. You go do your staging arrows. fifth graders to the left, sixth grade to the right. The auditorium was huge inside, big sparkly chandeliers, red velvet was rows and rows of cushioned seats leading up to the giant stage. We walked down the white aisles and followed the signs to the fifth grade staging areas, which was in the big room to the left of the stage. Inside were 4 rows of folding chairs facing the front of the room, which is where Mrs. Rubin was standing, waving us in as soon as we walked in the room. Okay, kids, take your seats, she was saying, pointing to the rows of chairs. Don't forget, you're sitting alphabetically. Come on, everybody, take your seats. Not too many kids had arrived yet, though, and the ones who weren't listening to her. Me and Jack were fighting with our rolled-up programs. Hey guys, it was Summer walking over to us. She was wearing a light pink dress and I think a little makeup. Wow, Summer, you look awesome, I told her because she really did. Really? Thanks, you do too, Augie. Yeah, you look okay, Summer, said Jack, kind of matter-of-factly, and for the first time I realized that Jack has a crush on her. This is so exciting, isn't it? Said Summer. Yeah, kind of, I answered, nodding. Oh man, look at this program, said Jack, scratching his forehead. We are going to be here all freaking day. I looked at my program. Headmaster's opening remarks, Dr. Harold Jason. Middle school director's address, Mr. Lawrence Tashman. Light and Day Middle School Choir. 5th grade student commencement address, Simena Chin. Pachelbel Canon Indi, Middle School Chamber Music Ensemble. 6th grade student commencement address, Mark Antoniak. Under Pressure, Middle School Choir. Middle school dance address, Miss Jennifer Rabin. Awards presentation, sit back, roll call of names. Why do you think that? I asked, because Mr. Jason's speeches go on forever, said Jack. He's ever worse than Tashman. My mom said she actually dozed off when he spoke last year, Summer added. What's the awards presentation? I asked. That's where they give medals to the biggest brainers, Jack answered, which would mean Charlotte and Simena will win everything in the 5th grade, like they won everything in the 4th grade and in the 3rd grade. Not in the 2nd grade, I laughed. They didn't give those awards out in the 2nd grade, he answered. Maybe you will win this year, I joked. Not unless they give awards for the most CS. He laughed. Everybody take your seats. Miss Rubin started yelling louder now, like she was getting annoyed that nobody was listening. We have a lot to get through, so take your seats. Don't forget you're sitting in alphabetical order. A through G is the first row. H through N is the second row. O through Q is the third row. R through Z is the last row. Let's go, people. We should go sit down, said Summer, walking toward the front section. You guys are definitely coming over my house after this, right? I called out after her. Definitely, she said, taking her seat next to Simena Chin. When did summer get so hot? Jack murmured in my ear. Shut up, dude, I said, laughing as we headed toward the 3rd row. Seriously, when did this happen? When did that happen? He whispered, taking the seat next to mine. Mr. Will, Miss Rubin shouted. Last time I checked, W came between R and Z, yes? Jack looked at her blankly. Dude, you're in the wrong row, I said. I am, and the face he made as he got up to leave, which was a mixture of looking completely confused and looking like he just played a joke on someone, totally cracked me up.